November 23rd remote school committee meeting. Tonight, sole item on the agenda is the superintendent search. I take a roll call vote. Aaron?
Here.
Tom?
Here.
Carla?
Here.
John?
Here.
Sean?
Here.
Okay, and from we have our consultant here, Dorothy Presser from Massachusetts Association of School Committees, Gail Dowd from Central Office, and Linda Engelson, and Andy on the technology. So, and for tonight, we will be using the chat option for public input on the agenda. So as I said, the sole purpose of tonight's meeting is the superintendent search process. We'll start by going over the survey and focus group information, and from that develop a the bio as to what we're looking for in a superintendent, and review the advertising material that went out, that will go out. That came out a little later today. I don't know if everyone had a chance to look at that yet, but we'll have time to in the agenda to go over that. So I didn't know whether you wanted to jump in from there, Dorothy, or not.
Happy to, if you'd like me to. So I think you summed up the charge for this evening rather well. And just, I believe you all got the focus group and survey write-up, which when we do the write-ups, what we're looking for is the strong themes that come through in the focus groups and in the survey, as what people see as the strengths and the challenges of the district, and then what they describe that they want or believe will be a successful leader as the next leader for the Reading Public Schools. We take that and give you some suggestions about how you might advertise for the position, which is the back page of that write-up. Some suggestions for the selection criteria is basically what came out of the focus groups and the survey. It's a rather short list. We try to keep the list relatively short so that you're not describing, that person on a pedestal that doesn't exist, but really concentrating on what are the strong things that you'd like to see in the next superintendent. So that gets used in the advertising, as well as when the preliminary screening committee is looking at the applications and interviewing the candidates, and when you take over and you're looking at the finalists, kind of keeping that in the back of your mind as the important experience or aspects of a person's background, or what you would like to see in the next leader. So obviously, you saw the survey, you saw the write-up, and I know that different things come through, but what I really tried to do was find the strong themes that came through as I was thinking about what to suggest for the selection criteria. So it's really up to you to agree, disagree, add, subtract. I would just suggest, if you add, that you kept it maybe to 7 or 8 bullets, as opposed to trying to get it or trying to add too many more.
Okay, thank you. Sean?
Sorry, are we ready to start?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, okay. So Dorothy, in the selection criteria, one thing that a takeaway that I had as I read these 5 is they feel, I'm going to call it execution oriented versus visionary, right? And I think the title on the brochure was seeking a visionary leader and that kind of thing. And I remember when you had a discussion of the results around, should we stay the path with some adjustments or chart a new path, or kind of maintain the status quo. The vast majority of the responses were within those first two buckets. So I thought we might want to capture something here, like, and what I jotted down is just as a starting point, but clear vision for how to elevate a district like Reading, which could be, here are the adjustments we need to make to our sort of current path to take it, take another step forward, or it could be sort of a new vision, So I wanted to just see something a little bit more, I don't know, visionary, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So, when you say that, you're thinking about adding a bullet, or are you thinking about the successful candidate will demonstrate a clear vision for?
Yeah, I think it would be, if I'm looking at the right place, under suggested selection criteria,
Yep.
The successful candidate will demonstrate. You've got 5 things there. I guess I'm suggesting adding a 6th one.
Yep. So a clear vision for. Do you want to say
how to elevate a district like Reading is what I am proposing, but open to wordsmithing.
Anyone on the committee want to do any wordsmithing on that?
Or just react to it?
Yep.
Tom?
Have to take myself off mute first. First of all, I guess as a point of discussion or tracking of this, we agreed in our meeting this morning from a way in which to execute this, Chuck and Dorothy and I, was to open this as a shared doc and then start editing so everybody sees the edits appropriately. So I have that, and I just took Sean's note, and I'll start sharing that very shortly, just so we can use that as a means of coalescing to the final 8, right? So that's one point. Second is I had very similar thought of more of a strategic vision type statement in this place as well. I'm struggling with it as a selection criteria, I guess, or versus somewhere else. I think the interviews might be able to show that, and it would really take somebody to do a lot of studying and a lot of understanding of our district in order to do that, versus having somebody who has more of a visionary trend or a visionary, bent or backstory or something else along those lines. So I don't have an edit for Sean other than to agree that I do think we need some way to categorize strategy and vision a little bit more than goal setting, planning, and development, which is the other bucket that some of that was in, and to make it more of a strong focus, I guess would be a better way to say it. So I'll just stop there and then I'll start sharing so we can edit the document as agreed to.
So, and I think, Tom, if I may, that, the vision should come from the community and the school committee and not from the person. So I think in sort of jumping a little bit off what Tom said, that not walking in with a clear vision, but the ability to, I'm not sure quite what the word is, but to lead.
Or how about demonstrated ability to understand and contribute to the school committee and community's vision, or something along those lines.
Sometimes people use the term a visionary leader. I'm not quite sure that's what you want, but just to throw a few more possible words out there.
So, Chuck, can I jump in?
Sure.
So, so Tom, I think I'm on the same page as you, and just to maybe explain my rationale for choosing the words that I did. The reason that I chose elevate a district like Reading versus how to elevate Reading is because I think there are a lot of different ways that you could demonstrate that, right? One would be a detailed understanding of our district and some of our challenges and tangible initiatives that, that might move us forward, that are in line with the, the vision and the priorities asserted by the community. Another would be, let me talk about a similar challenge I faced in a similar district, or a different, different district, and how I approached it, and how I built, how I was collaborative, and how I built consensus, and so forth. So, I know some of that would come out in some of these other bullets as well, but my intent here was to say, and while Dorothy, your point's well taken that the vision comes from the community and the committee, we also need sort of a head cheerleader, if you will, for that vision, and for, and for how to execute it. So that was kind of my thinking in approaching the language this way.
So I agree. I thank you for that, Sean. Chuck, if you don't mind, I guess. I like where you're going. I like where Chuck's going. I think we need to kind of coalesce those a little bit, and I want to make it a little bit more proactive than what Chuck had put out there. Maybe something like, and I pulled up Notepad so I could start drafting it, but Sean stopped talking before I had finished it. So I'm thinking maybe something like an ability to drive consensus and execute against a vision to elevate a district like Reading, or something like that. So you're the point of driving consensus, you're bringing people together, you're bringing the stakeholders together, but you're not just building the vision, you're then executing against it, right? So something along those lines. I'm happy to type it out as well as we can talk about it, but that's kind of where I was trying to make it a little bit stronger than Chuck's, but not necessarily have that vision already. You need to bring the stakeholders together. You need to take that, and then now you're executing appropriately. As a potential third option.
I could get on board with that.
How about, instead of say ability to drive consensus, is ability to sell, then execute against a vision?
So my first gut on sell means that you're not bringing in other feedback from it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And I do think we have a critical role as a school committee in that responsibility, as your first foray did, Chuck. And we could add to the consensus of who they're building it with if we want to, but I think these are relatively short bullets overall. So, in that regard, you're driving consensus amongst the school committee, the community, the parents, the teachers, et cetera, for what that vision is. Then you're working to execute against it. But the shorter, succinct version here, I think, works appropriately in that space too.
Is the word against necessary?
I was wondering the same thing.
We can then execute. Yeah, I'm happy to strike that.
Ability to drive.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I'm curious about the language, a district like Reading. Are we doing that because we want them to have experience in a community similar to Reading, or are we saying, do they have the ability to do this for Reading? Because then it would seem to make sense to scrap district like Reading versus just, can they come in and elevate Reading public schools?
So I think of it as an understanding of a district like Reading and our challenges. It doesn't have to be Reading per se, but somebody who comes from a district that's fundamentally different from a financial position and can't sort of comprehend our, some of our budget challenges, for instance, that's less compelling to me. Which isn't to say that person can't be successful in this process, but it's less compelling to me than somebody who understands some of the unique challenges fleshed out in the survey and the focus groups.
Okay, so it's a reflection on the experience they're bringing to the table, not just the skills we hope they can bring to the table.
Yes and no. I mean, I think there are two ways. There are two ways to demonstrate that you can be successful in a town like Reading. At least two ways. One is you've done it in a situation, in a setting like Reading, and two is you have a clear enough understanding of our challenges and can articulate how you might face those challenges, even if the challenges you faced in a previous role were slightly different, right, or didn't. Weren't exactly the same. So I guess my point is I'm less interested in sort of, generically, here's what we did in my district, unless you can help me map it to, some of the challenges that we face here.
That makes sense. Thank you, Sean.
Can I ask another sort of grammar question?
Sure.
Ability to drive consensus, then execute a vision for elevating a district like Reading?
Okay.
I just think
I was actually going to.
Go ahead.
No, Dorothy, you got it.
I was just going to say ability to how to elevate, didn't. Go ahead, Tom.
I was actually going to talk a little bit more about the word elevate and whether we want to put that out there as the word we want in here versus, something more like improvement or anything else along those lines. The only reason I asked the question is, while I do agree we want to improve, we want to get things better, elevate seems like a pretty, it just seemed to me it has a connotation of a pretty large step up. And maybe that's what we intend. But I don't know if that's what we want to convey, if that makes sense. So I'm curious what people's thoughts are on the choice of word for elevating or elevate, and the connotation that comes with that.
Aaron?
I mean, I think of elevate as to raise, to lift up, which I like for multiple reasons for us. I think part of it is that, there's always room for improvement. So I would expect someone to come in and have ideas around that and be able to execute that. But I also feel like we've oftentimes struggled with morale issues and just sort of overall attitude toward the schools. So I like the idea of trying to raise that as well. So I actually like the word elevate.
Carla?
Thank you. Chuck, if it's okay.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see. Okay.
Yep, I literally raised my hand. I'm fine with the word elevate or elevating. I would like to add ability to drive consensus, then develop and execute a vision for elevating a district like Reading. And I don't know if you want to add the word develop or advance. I had originally then develop and execute a vision.
Okay. So I'll just jump in here quickly.
Yeah.
I didn't purposely put develop in there initially. I'm not necessarily hard opposed to it, but I didn't put it in there initially because I think part of the consensus process is developing. In building the consensus, you are in the process of developing the vision, right? I think you can't build a consensus and then develop something. You have to have been developing in the consensus building process, and then what you've come to, what you've coalesced to, is what you're going to go execute against. That's kind of the reason why I didn't put that in there initially. Does that make sense, Carla?
It does, but I think that the way it's written now, it almost, the consensus is driven, but I think the develop and execute speaks to, it's the superintendent's plan, so to speak, on how to execute what our consensus and what our vision is. That's how I look at it. That he or she listens to what our visions are for the district and what the teachers and the parents and the administration and everybody else is. And then it's almost like the superintendent is developing and executing a vision. I think I'd be fine with it either way, but to me, this makes more sense. But I understand what you were saying, Tom.
John?
Thanks, Chuck. I'd almost wonder if you're going to use develop, if you put it in front of consensus, so the ability to develop and drive consensus. And that way it's showing that you're developing it while getting to consensus. And I picture this as part of the DLT. When they're meeting, they're trying to build consensus on a specific program or how they're going to do something. So just moving it over might allow it to read a little better.
I'm going to do a second line so we can look at it separately and cleanly. It's starting to get a little bit.
Sean?
So Carla, I think coming into this, I think I would have agreed with you, but I think Dorothy convinced me otherwise, which is, I think of develop as sort of come up with, like, where do the ideas come from? And Dorothy, what I heard you say that it resonates with me is that the vision belongs to the community and the committee. And so if you put develop in here, it almost feels like that makes the superintendent accountable for the creation of the vision, which is not exactly what we're trying to say. So, you were getting at, Carla, things like you were thinking. Sorry, Chuck, just one more thing. Carla, yeah. You were getting at things like, coming up with the plan to execute the vision and things like that. I think that's captured in the third bullet, proven effectiveness in goal setting, planning, etc. So I think that's how you marry those two ideas. The superintendent's role is to bring the community and the committee together to create that consensus and then to execute against it. And they've got to do the goal setting, the planning, the tactical stuff that gets you from here's the vision to here's how we're going to be successful against it over time. So that's how I see these two kind of fitting together. And I think I'm on the same page as I think where Tom is, which is probably leaving out the word develop.
So what if we, thank you, Sean, what if we added in, instead of taking out develop, we put in ability to develop and drive from consensus. So add in from. So then it's not coming from the superintendent, it's coming from the community and the school committee.
John, do you take that as a friendly amendment to your change? Is that okay if I put it there?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So we're essentially, I'm going to strike these for now because I think we're agreed to be passed.
Curious as to Sean's thoughts on that. Does that?
So, I mean, we're getting very pedantic here, which is okay. I mean, that's literally what we're trying to do. But so forgive me if my response seems pedantic. When I hear drive from consensus, how that sounds to me grammatically is consensus was done upon the superintendent, and the superintendent's role is then to operate from that consensus. I think what we're trying to say is the superintendent plays a critical role as the nexus of the school system between the community, the teachers, the students, the school committee, the staff, etc. The superintendent plays that nexus role of driving consensus to create this vision. It's not the superintendent's vision per se, but they are the one who is driving the car or whatever, and then executing upon that shared vision. So I like currently the last line. I think it's sort of pithy and direct and gets after what we I think we think is the role of the superintendent in this process. But I'm also biased because that's the closest to my original recommendation. So I will acknowledge that and hold my peace.
Carla?
You're muted, Carla.
Carla?
Thank you. I think we're going back to number 3. It's the most concise, right? So I think I would go with number 3, ability to drive consensus, then execute a vision for elevating a district like Reading.
Could I just add one thing that I heard Sean say? I like concise. Sean used the term shared vision.
If that's the case, would it be the shared vision instead of a shared vision?
Yes. Yep. I like it. I will accept that as a friendly amendment, Dorothy.
As will I. Are we okay with that bullet now? John Parks, with your amendment, you okay with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Are we okay for me to delete these other 4 then?
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. All right.
Just put a period, Tom.
I'm not presuming it's the last one yet, so, but I'll put it there for now until somebody else wants to add to it.
And you may decide you want a different order, so.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that too.
Sean?
Okay, so on the suggested qualifications, I really had kind of a question for the group. The third one says minimum of 10 years experience, including experience in classroom administration and central office settings. And Dorothy, I recognize that that's a representation of question, I don't know what question it is, question 5, where we asked, the list of positions candidates may have held in the past. Which prior positions do you think would prove most valuable for the next superintendent? And those were roughly the roles there.
Yeah.
I don't read that question to translate necessarily to somebody needs to have all of those roles, which I think is how this bullet reads. And so what I, in looking back at recent searches, often like a high school principal, for instance, is a common candidate profile. So I wonder if we want to soften this a little bit so that we're not appearing to close the door on folks that don't have experience in all 3 of those roles.
So you could, I understand that, and you're right, it did come from that one, like, there was that one question where those 3 things really jumped out as the top. But so you could put something like experience in classroom administration, comma, with central office setting, with experience in central office preferred, or something along that line, so that you left it in there, or you could leave it out.
Yeah, so the edit that I was considering or maybe suggesting was, what if we included the word ideally in front of including after the comma there, Tom? Ideally including experience in, put ideally before including, please. Yeah. So, the unicorn candidate, maybe it's not a unicorn probably, but the ideal candidate can check all those boxes. But we're leaving space for somebody who's got experience in, say, 2 of them, but not the third. Or,
Can I just say that it came through pretty strongly to me, that classroom experience. That having been spent time in a classroom came through.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're suggesting phrase it so that central office is the one that appears to be optional, so to speak?
Yes.
I gotcha.
Are we, just point of clarification, are we bucketing principals into administration?
Yes.
Is that well understood? Yes.
Makes sense to me.
Aaron?
Yeah, I agree with Dorothy on this one, because I don't want to sound like someone could walk in with none of these either. because I do think it was very clear that a solid understanding of teaching and experience was important to the people who filled out the survey. So I guess I would rather, I don't know, I'm trying to think. It feels like we really want that, including experience in the classroom and administration, and maybe central office preferred. I don't know what other people think, but I don't like the idea of the ideally in front of all of them, because I feel like it opens the door to them bringing none of that experience, and that's, I don't think, what we want.
Yeah, so Aaron, that's a totally fair point. One thing I'll throw out there, just to kind of play devil's advocate on all of this discussion, is that I think that the objective of this is to help us cast a wide net, a relatively wide net. We want to be honest about what the qualifications are, obviously, but you know, to the degree that some candidate were to pop up that somehow had administration experience and central office experience, but not classroom experience, I would think that would, you know, maybe be filtered out during the selection process somehow. But the point's well taken. I hear everything you guys are saying. So, I mean, another way to approach this could be including experience in classroom and administration roles or settings, and then maybe semicolon. Preferred candidates may additionally have a central office experience or something along those lines.
So Sean, you cut out on me a little bit as you were saying that. So
sure. So we lose the word
I'll
ideally.
take that out there. Yep.
Including experience in classroom and administration or administrative settings, I guess, or administrative roles, maybe. Is that a way to say it?
Yep.
Semicolon, preferred candidates may possess central office experience.
Or you could, Sean, use your word ideally again and say, including experience in classroom and administrative roles, and ideally central office experience. Just a thought.
I was also thinking, I think, John, you had your hand raised, so before
John,
you speak.
yep. John?
Mine's more overall to Dorothy in regards to the year's experience. If we're expecting classroom experience, administrative experience, and possibly central office experience, is 10 years enough time to get a level of experience in those three?
It would be a minimum, and you're going to find that the vast majority of candidates do have more experience than that.
Okay. So would it make sense to drop it to, raise it to 15 years then, allowing for a more narrow pool with experience? Or do you want to keep the pool wide open?
I think that's up to you guys.
Yeah, I'd like to keep it as very wide open, just because someone only has 10 years. I mean, you know, that doesn't mean that, I mean, there's a lot of rising stars out there that could have, you know, less than 15 years that you wouldn't want to potentially pass over, at least seeing them. You know. Just a thought. I mean, you know, you never know, who ends up coming through. I mean, the person that, you know, comes in second because they only had, 10 years experience and no central office or something might be a potential hire for the next superintendent for an assistant or something. Who knows? I mean, just, I'd hate to throw out 10 years is a long time.
Nope, that's fine. I just wanted to raise a question.
Aaron? Or is it Sean?
Sean is next.
Tom, maybe one thing to suggest here is if you go to the one you're hovering over now, the middle version there, just to be parallel with this with the second bullet, what if we just said central office experience preferred? And then it would be short, sweet, and run parallel to the educational requirement.
So that leads to my question. I didn't necessarily see in the results that central office experience was preferred. I saw superintendents and principals were the preferred number. I think it's a question of what we want to ask ourselves. But if you looked at it, the two number ones were superintendent and principal.
And
if you're a principal, the assistant was third of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, assistant superintendent was fourth, but it was those top four were all kind of in a grouping.
Yeah, I think I based it a little bit on the question that had the Likert scale.
Mm-hmm.
That it was a superintendent, assistant superintendent, classroom experience, which is how central office got on there. But it's up to you guys. So.
Okay.
Aaron?
This is getting nitpicky, but I'm struggling with the fact that we're using the word experience 3 times. I don't know if that bothers anyone else.
No, it's a good point.
It just doesn't like read smoothly to me to keep saying that word. So I'm looking at the bottom one. Is it possible to say minimum of 10 years in education? Get rid of the word experience, including experience in classroom and administrative roles, and ideally central office, period.
You could actually put minimum of 10 years in education, including classroom, administrative roles, and ideally central office.
So you're taking experience out altogether, Dorothy, or putting it at the end?
Or we could put it after central office, maybe. How does that read? And I think you need an and after classroom.
And you can take out the in too. Oh. Yeah, and administrative roles.
But then we have 2 ands back to back.
No. Well, you don't need the comma, I don't think. Oh, I was moving the and there because I see the central office one as an extra. So I was sort of lumping together classroom and administrative roles, comma, and ideally central office experience. That just feels cleaner to me.
Okay, so we now have 4 versions.
How about on the fourth option? And I won't get mad if Sean wants to change it. On the fourth one, we say, get rid of that word experience after central office and start the bullet by saying, experience shall entail a minimum of 10 years in education, including classroom and administrative roles, and ideally central office. Sean's being awful quiet.
Aaron has convinced me we don't need the word experience. So
I didn't say we had to get rid of all of them.
No,
I just felt like 3
yeah.
times is very redundant.
Yeah, I like the second one from the bottom personally. but I've stopped feeling strongly about it. Next, I want to move on to a debate about whether or not a master's degree is an advanced degree.
Hang tight there.
So how do people feel about the second one from the bottom?
I was going to
Carl
say,
and John?
I was going to go with the bottom one, but I'm fine with the second from the bottom.
to me, it seems weird to have experience at the end. I was going to say minimum of 10 years experience in education, including classroom and administrative roles, and ideally central office, period. Just moving the experience back up a little bit. It just seems weird to have it at the end to me, but anybody?
Yeah, I want to see that.
You almost always see a job rec starting with something like that,
Yeah.
minimum something experience.
I like that.
Works for me.
Now
Yep.
that that's been changed, I like that second to bottom.
Okay. So then we can strike
Yeah.
these and that. We're back to that one now.
Okay,
Okay.
Sean, did you have something on the degree requirement you started to say?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure it matters, but I would view a master's degree as an advanced degree typically. I thought anything beyond a bachelor's would typically be qualified as advanced, but I mean, Dorothy, maybe, you know, in the education context, people view it differently.
Yeah.
So
This is the way it's generally expressed.
Yep, it's fine.
In a way that if, you know, if someone has maybe not a doctorate, but has tags or something beyond. So that's the way it's generally expressed.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
So on that one, should it say master's degree required with an advanced degree preferred?
I think
Or leave it like,
yeah, I think we're phrasing these bullets without, I don't know, prepositions and other
yeah,
sort of unnecessary parts of speech. So I think it's fine as it is.
okay.
These are the times I wish we had an English teacher amongst us.
That was Jean.
I know. She was always good at wordsmithing things for us to get it cleaner and better. Okay, so anybody else have a preference of these two?
I like the original.
So let's see agreement for the original.
Me too.
Okay.
Dorothy, I have a question on the top. What does it mean by or eligible for licensure?
If you have a candidate from another state who
Oh,
may
okay.
who may not have the superintendent licensure in Massachusetts, but would certainly be eligible to get it.
Got it. Okay.
Any other changes? Does anybody feel like they want to discuss the order at all, or should we just leave that to Chuck, Dorothy, and I when we finalize it?
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that.
Me too.
I'm good with that.
Okay. All right, so Chuck, Dorothy, anything? What's next?
Uh,
Before we move on, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Dorothy, when I was reading through these, I was looking at 214 responses, and I'm wondering, is that a standard response rate as far as the number we set out?
Actually, it is pretty average, I guess. I was looking back at another district that was doing something in about the same time frame that you're doing it. A little bit smaller district, they had roughly half the response rate on their survey.
Okay, so 214, I know, for a district like Reading, usually we've gotten higher responses, so I just wasn't sure if it possibly was the timing, closing it before a holiday weekend, and I just wanted your feedback on that.
Yeah, I would say the response rate would be about what I would expect, and I would also say that the consistency, if you had 214 responses and it seemed like they were all over the board and there was no consistency in the themes that came through, then I would be a little bit more concerned that we hadn't captured enough. But the fact that what I was hearing in the focus groups and what I saw in the survey were pretty consistent, and the themes that came through gave me some comfort that we were capturing the information you wanted.
And with the focus groups, did we have larger turnouts than you would have expected?
No, actually, maybe a little bit smaller than I would have expected. However, I can tell you I've been to focus groups when they were live where I've sat for a long time in an empty room. Okay. So it's kind of hard to tell what the response is going to be. Generally, if there's a lot of contention in the district about an issue, you're going to get a higher response than if things are generally in pretty good shape.
Thank you.
So is the next thing to take a look at the brochure?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I will pull that over since I can't seem to stop sharing for some reason.
Like the picture that kept popping up when you tried.
It's my screen share in the background. I mean, my screensaver, whatever. Actually, Chuck, before we do that, we do have one Q&A post or comment. We've already addressed it, but just to post it out, Jeffrey Corum, Ridge Road, demonstrate shows up twice. The successful candidate will demonstrate ability to demonstrate, understand and contribute. That bullet, second in red, needs some grammar help generally. And then he wrote back, okay, that bullet was deleted. So we've addressed that one concern.
Okay.
And looks like Sean and Aaron have their hands up.
I'm going to let Aaron go first. I've spoken enough and mine are just typos, so.
Go ahead, Aaron.
So I was wondering why the suggested selection criteria that we just went over is not reflected in the brochure. I would think that should be front and center.
They absolutely will be. They're not in there because we didn't have them yet.
Oh, okay. So where would you put them?
So we're actually thinking that one possibility, because there's a lot of information here, may be that we might actually expand this to be 3 pages and maybe put in some more pictures or spread out the pictures a little bit more so that, yes, they will be front and center and they will be right in line somewhere with the qualifications. This was just sort of an initial giving you an idea of what things were going to look like. And certainly we want to know about any typos that you see so we can, the more eyes that look at that, the better.
Okay, I was very confused by that. I would love to see it even before qualifications and compensation. Like I would think it should be the top thing.
I will make a note.
Sean, you can give your typos.
So, Aaron, just so you mean before, you mean below the mission?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's everything. It's what it's who we're looking for. So I feel like it needs to be the most, highlighted salient point that really stands out from the get-go.
So Aaron, can I, so if this is, this is sort of an advertisement, right? So we're trying to say, here's who we are, here's the opportunity. I would actually think about putting, here's what we're looking for last. Right? I think you want people to sort of, hear about what's going on and, about our schools and about our programming and so forth. And then you focus on what we're looking for. So, I'm fine either way, but I'm not sure if I were building this from, if somebody asked me to build this from scratch, I think I probably would have put that stuff more towards the end.
Yeah, I would say typically you put the information about the district first, and then you say what the, I'm losing the word I want. The information about the position comes after the information about the district.
Okay, that's helpful.
It's kind of like, this is who we are and this is what you have to be.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yep.
Sean, did you have?
Yeah, just a couple things. So Dorothy, just generally overall, I actually really like this, and the one thing specifically I liked in the mission statement how you captured the sentiment around the community and the schools and the town, kind of being collaborative and working together to create a great educational environment. So appreciate that.
No credit for that. You'll have to thank Gail and other people who sent me the information.
Oh, there you go. Oh, wait, this exists already. Sorry, this is an actual existing statement. Sorry, I was thinking it was a reflection of the survey. No, good call. Okay, so forget that. I just said that. The couple of things I caught as maybe typos here. So under qualifications and comp, I think it should say compensation will be commensurate. I just think there's a word missing there.
Yep.
Or we could get rid of will and just say compensation commensurate with experience, either way. And then where we talk about RISE underneath school buildings there, an integrated preschool with classrooms located at RMHS as well as the Wood End Elementary School with 115 students. It's a bit of a run-on sentence. So I thought either a semicolon in there somewhere or just break it up into two sentences. Just so it flows a little bit better.
Okay.
I don't feel strongly about exactly what it says or how it's worded. It's a lot in one sentence. And then the last thing was, sorry, Tom, I'll let you finish.
No problem. I'm good.
Last thing.
Send me where you want me to go now.
And then the last thing on the bottom of the second page, under timeline, I wonder if we should indicate that that's like a planned or targeted appointment date. I know we sort of anticipate that we're going to, meet that timeline.
Yep.
But just in case.
Yep. And that, yeah, that. Yes.
That's it. Thank you.
Hey, and maybe Gail or Linda Engelson can weigh in on this, but this is real nitpicky, but is it Alice M. Barrows or is it just Alice Barrows? We don't have Bill Brown here to tell me, so.
I can double check.
I think it's M, Chuck.
I thought it was M, but I thought I heard a debate one time that it wasn't M. So
It might have been Bill Brown.
it might have been. It was probably at town meeting.
It's M on our website, so we probably should stick with that.
M it is.
Okay. Anybody else?
So On the, and Gail, this, I need you for this too, on the special education programs in all schools, is that contemplating there's a learning center in all schools, or
Yes. That was
so not necessarily an actual program?
not necessarily an actual program because
Because we don't have an
we
actual.
don't have it at Barrows. I don't
Right.
believe there's a program at Parker, but we do
Yeah.
have
we
learning
do have a
centers
learning
and
center.
special education students across all schools.
Bridges at Parker.
Oh, that's right. There is a, yep.
Are we, isn't there another, aren't we also a member of Essex? The, for the vocational Essex Aggie, or one of those?
That's out of district.
Well,
Okay,
we pay this, the town pays for both Essex and the Voc, right? We get invoiced for it. But are we members of it?
No.
I think a kid can just choose to go there, right? They can apply there
Yeah.
and away they go.
They have to have a specific program, Tom, in which.
They have to have a specific program that's not offered at the Voc school that you're a member of.
Right. Which Essex does, because it's specific to pretty much a very targeted set anyway, but yeah, okay.
Right, generally, I don't know of any district that actually belongs to two vocational schools.
okay, I'm just curious.
Tom?
Yep.
Chuck,
Carla?
just one complete nitpicky thing. Under qualifications and compensation, there's two spaces after the bullet, before licensed at the beginning.
Is there? Hard
Looks
for
like-
me to tell. There might be, there might not be. I'll just make
Okay.
a point that says,
Yeah. I
check
need
it.
to know.
Dorothy, in our current superintendent contract, we have, other benefits beyond sort of the normal town of Reading benefits around professional development and things like that. Should we capture any of that here, or is it sort of implied that that's part of the negotiation and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say it's implied, and particularly when you have compensation commensurate with experience, we usually consider compensation to be more than just salary, but the benefit package.
Right.
If anyone
So-
happens to, go ahead.
So just back to that, Tom, if you can scroll up a little bit, back to the qualifications and compensation. So I just want to make sure I understand. So we spoke earlier regarding the
Yeah, we'll change that. Yes. Yep.
suggested selection criteria. Some of those things are in there and some of them aren't, or how is that going to work?
That-
For instance, the 10 years, that will be part of the selection criteria as well. So shouldn't,
That's here.
Yeah, that's under qualifications.
never mind, sorry.
Yeah, we'll make sure everything matches.
Aaron, did you?
That's all I was gonna say, that to make sure that minimum 10 years statement matches with what we just
Yeah.
came up.
Yep,
That's this topic right here.
yes.
Okay.
If anyone else catches any more typos, just let me or Gail know. And as we continue to work on this, the more eyes, the better on this. So appreciate everyone picking up the little things.
That includes the public that are watching as well. We'll take feedback from those. Carla's point, I guess, of spacing, I think we do have some spacing kind of questions that might hit here too, just to look at in terms of semicolon spacing, maybe not, but minor details.
Dorothy, I know that with the suggested selection criteria, we relied heavily on the survey and the focus groups. Does that mean that as a committee we shouldn't add additional things that we would like to see?
No, if you have additional things, you should absolutely add them.
There's one of the things that I didn't see a lot of in the stuff, which I was surprised, was more emphasis on building projects and early childhood education stuff, experience in that. And I would want to hear, especially if someone had that experience, I'd want to know about it, their building project experience, because that is something that the committee, was kind of been probably not I don't want to use I'm not using the right term, but it's kind of been backburnered a little bit because of COVID, but it was certainly something that this committee was going to start talking about, and we actually talked about it a couple meetings ago. We met just to kind of, and we're meeting again next month with the permanent building committee. So it is something that I would want to know whether someone had experience in that or not. So I just throw that out to the committee, or maybe we just don't bother to put it in there. I don't much. What do others think about that?
Chuck, wouldn't that be more of an interview question in and of itself than an actual criteria for hire?
It could be, yeah. I mean, I don't know how. And Dorothy, does the committee, when the screening committee meets for the first time, do they establish questions to ask? Is that how
Yes.
that's done?
Yeah. Yes.
So
they will
there's
establish
just not so people just aren't asking things off the cuff?
No, we talk about we talk about a set of questions that are asked of each candidate.
Okay.
So yes, and I guess a couple things. You will see whether people have building experience on their resumes, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
In some senses in Massachusetts today, it's hard to find someone who hasn't had some experience with school construction. But I think you're right. I was a little bit surprised seeing the number of comments about space needs, that in the questions about experience, the experience with building projects didn't rise to a higher level than it did.
Tom, did you have something?
Yeah, I guess I get where John, where you're going with regards to, is it selection criteria versus interview question? Maybe where Chuck's going is it a nice plus, right? It may not be a critical need, but it might be, an extra bonus if you've demonstrated this. If we have two candidates that tick all the other boxes, is there one that pushes candidate A over candidate B? And do we think that's enough of a criteria to say, yes, that might push candidate A over candidate B, all other things being equal? So is there a way to think about it that way as we think about the selection criteria and almost a Pew matrix of decisions about who we're hiring in this space?
But are we then limiting the field in and of itself where we're trying to keep it as open as possible?
It's a valid question. I think that's why it could be, you could list it as kind of bonus as opposed to required. It doesn't, I don't think we should require it. That's my view to your similar point, John, I think. But I do think there's a lot of, I mean, this committee didn't go through it with Chuck, unfortunately or unfortunately did, but, you know, with Reading Memorial High School and the lawsuit around that, there's a lot that, you know, we don't want to have to deal with again. Now, that's not all on the superintendent, right? But those are the kind of things that if you have experience, you're used to the RFP process, you're used to working with contractors, you're used to the change control process, there's a lot that you can save the city and the town, I guess the town, by doing things the right way.
Yep, but that should be under a project manager's job function, not the superintendent's.
It should be.
Theoretically.
It should be, but there's oversight, right?
Yep.
And it's ultimately the schools are ours and the superintendent's responsibility in the grand scheme of thing. That project manager is going to leave at the end of the project.
Yep.
Right. So we want to make sure whatever comes out is the final result that we all want and need, and it's within budget and all the other kind of fun stuff that goes into that space. So I think there's a question here about whether it's a bonus criteria, but that opens up another potential can of worms about other bonus criteria that we may want to think about as well. So I'm just want to put that out there.
Sean?
Yeah, Tom, I think I'm in the same boat as you. I view it strictly as kind of a bonus. You know, I mean, the experience we had with the high school, there's the project manager aspect, but there's also the, you know, the permanent building committee. I mean, it resulted directly from some of those experiences, right? So we have a couple of layers of oversight now. So, I'm kind of in this. I'm kind of with John. I think, you know, if somebody has it on their resume, they've done it great. Maybe it's a tiebreaker, or you know, it's a bonus or whatever, however you want to frame it. But I don't view it as critical enough to capture it here along, you know, sort of fundamental skills and traits rather than a unique, you know, specific experience.
Carla? Carla?
I think I may side with you on this, Chuck. I would like to see it under suggested selection criteria. Maybe it's the last bullet that says building management experience a plus, and you just leave it that way, so you they know to almost emphasize it, and it's not a deal breaker. It's not you know, you're not going to exclude people from the process. I don't think it's immediate enough of a question to have it during the interview process. I'm being on interview teams before. There's only a handful of questions that each candidate is asked. And I think there are probably a lot more questions to ask before building experience. So it would be nice, I think, to put it here just as a plus. So building manager experience a plus.
Is that the language you want, building management experience? And how would you differentiate that versus the principal's job of managing the building and the people in it and the kids in it and stuff like that?
You could say construction.
Building project experience a plus, not management.
Or construction, yeah, or construction.
But experience with school building projects a plus.
Yeah.
Good one. There's that experience again.
John?
I don't think I raised my hand, but I was gonna.
I know, I'm curious.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So I was actually. You're very intuitive, Chuck. I was drafting something here. What I was thinking about, and you know, this bullet probably captures it, but I was thinking experience navigating MSBA and school building construction process.
I like that. Yeah.
That says it.
A plus.
A plus, right?
Plus, yeah, sorry. Yeah, good catch. Thank you, Carla.
I like that.
I agree. That's my favorite of the three.
Do we want to add 3 or 4 more options before we choose, or?
Charlie, you're good.
Quicker. You're getting quicker.
Depends
Charlie, you're
on
good with
whether
that
you're
one?
a Tom Brady fan or not.
John, are you okay with that one?
I still think we're going to lose candidates because of it, but I'm fine with what the committee agrees with.
I don't think you'll lose candidates. I don't think you will. Particularly when you add, you put on the qualifier that it's a plus, not a deal
Requirement.
breaker. Yeah.
Anyone else? All right,
I guess I have one more.
go ahead.
Sorry, Chuck. I thought I saw it come out here pretty clearly that curriculum was one of the keys as well from a feedback perspective or focus area perspective. We're not listing anything in the selection criteria with regards to curriculum selection, implementation, or anything else along those lines. I don't necessarily have verbiage necessary as I go through it, but I was just going through it and trying to check a few boxes mentally. You could sort of tie it to high academic performance. You could tie it to diversity and equity, but I think it's, curriculum selection, implementation, the process around that is a pretty important thing that came out of the overall survey stuff as well that we haven't talked about at all yet.
Chuck, can I chime in here?
Sure.
We do have a position on staff for curriculum and teaching, which is the assistant superintendent's role.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that it's duplicity. You've already got somebody doing that role. That's been a role since well before Craig. My opinion, it's duplicating a role where you've already got somebody with experience in that role.
Presuming she stays in that role.
So Tom,
Well,
Yep.
then you
what
hire
if we
another assistant.
added it? So on the bullet that says an understanding and recognition of good teaching, how about that says an understanding and recognition of curriculum development and good teaching.
So you're going, your point with that, Chuck, is to try to say there's the guidance of an understanding of good teaching and there's a guidance of an understanding of good curriculum development. Is that essentially what you're trying to do?
As an overall leader, you have an understanding of those things. Not necessarily you're going to be doing it, but you have an understanding of it. Does that make sense?
I like that inclusion, and I like the way your thought process of what you're trying to drive at there is you're also understanding good teaching. So you're not necessarily, obviously, and we've already asked that they have been a teacher as part of this, but you're not doing the teaching anymore. This is saying you're not doing the curriculum development anymore, but you know what it looks like, what good curriculum development is or something like that.
Yeah.
I would only, Chuck, ask if we could move this forward in that way. Good curriculum development and teaching.
Yeah.
Can I make Sean's up there.
Sean?
So I understand the rationale that got us here. I'm a little hesitant to start putting in sort of specific roles that report to the superintendent. I liked the first bullet around developing and leading a successful administrative team. I think it's kind of a given that a superintendent understands sort of the core functions of that administrative team. So it's not clear to me that it makes a lot of sense for us to highlight one specific one specific role essentially, that as John points out, does belong to somebody on the administrative team. Because, otherwise, why aren't we capturing, operations here, for instance?
The only caveat I would say to that is we have things like budget development in here, right? And that's the financial side of things too, right? So is that?
Yeah, but there's literally a superintendent's budget, right? I mean, the superintendent owns the first draft of the budget, so it's a little bit different than overseeing a role that has a particular responsibility. I mean, we're definitely nitpicking here. I'm just just reacting.
I'm fine either way. I hear what Sean's saying, where I'd be in the top bullet.
Aaron, you had something I think you were going to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. To your comment on budget, I see that as an important role of the superintendent to develop the budget, whereas our superintendent does not do our curriculum development, our assistant superintendent does. So I prefer the original statement and understanding and recognition of good teaching because of the oversight of the superintendent in that realm. I think there were a lot of comments in the survey that didn't necessarily all pertain to the role of a superintendent. And it's still really helpful feedback to us to know what people are happy with or concerned about, but I don't think 100% of it translates to this document.
Tom, did you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say, obviously, I think, yes, there's no way that 100% of what this is saying translates to this document in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I think the counter to some of that point or the thought process there is understanding and recognition of good teaching. Yes, but they're not observing good teaching all the time. They're not the one who are rating the good teaching all the time. That's the principal's job. So you could argue that's the principal's job to do that as well. So I mean, we can go in all sorts of circles, but I think curriculum and the tools we choose for it can rise or fall the ship if we choose the wrong tools. It's been proven that curriculum tools are a huge portion of district success. And so, yes, while we have a team, an individual and team, with the co-coordinators that are responsible for it, there's still an oversight responsibility. There's still a, knowing what to look for, knowing how to guide and lead. As any one of us does in a management role in any of our jobs as well, we don't always have to do everything, but we have to know how to ask the right questions. We have to know how to challenge. We have to know how to poke and prod, make sure that all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed appropriately as well. So it's not taking the role of somebody, and that's actually why I like where Chuck put it. It's as much as it's saying it's an important part of the greater function of the administrative office and team, and the oversight and recognition of that is important. But that said, if I'm the only one who thinks so, then we can cross it out. So it is what it is.
Yeah, Tom, I don't disagree with anything you just said. I just come back to what, wouldn't we then say the same thing about, a solid special education background, for instance, right? I mean, there are other functions that are, also critical for the superintendent to be able to poke and prod and ask questions and identify the right talent and all those sorts of things. So, it's just, and there were lots of comments about special education for sure. So we run a risk of opening a Pandora's box here if we start capturing all of the sort of individual roles of the administrative team as a whole versus focusing on the things that the superintendent explicitly leads. which, you know, and what I'm saying may be an argument for why are we calling out recognition of good teaching?
Correct, yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's where I was saying, yes,
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
He or she does not lead that. It's good
They
for
don't lead it.
him or her to understand it, but
John,
gonna
did
say-
you have something?
They don't lead it, but they're the ones that at the end of the day are going to assess those leading it. So our principals are the ones that are going to be doing the teacher evaluations.
mhm.
Who's doing the principal evaluations?
Yep.
So it does go towards good teaching.
Same, but they actually, just to that point, John, he or she will be assessing the assistant superintendent responsible for curriculum development, right? So it's actually more direct than the teaching recognition in terms of their role and responsibility.
I'm not gonna. I see the curriculum one is excessive, Tom. I don't think it's needed. It is covered. In my opinion, I think the good teaching is something that he's got to be a leader, or he or she, excuse me, has to be a leader in the district, and should be able to teach. Therefore, he should be able to model good teaching. And if he's doing presentations to his staff or to his or her district leadership team, then that's teaching as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're going around in circles, so it sounds like I'm the only one who's on this, so we can take it off, I suppose. I mean, Sean's point of you can start going through all the other things on the list and going down Pandora's box is fine, but and special ed was actually going to be the next one I was going to talk about, Sean. But if we don't want to go down that path, then and that's what it seems like the committee is not wanting to do, then that's fine. Everybody wants that off?
I think so. I mean, and oh, sorry.
Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, you know, I think that our suggested qualification, where we're looking for like a broad set of experiences, is intended to get at, you know, understanding a lot of these different issues, right? You know, as opposed to somebody who has a fairly narrow field of view. So I'm not sure it's necessary to try and start capturing each, you know, each function of the central office team.
Carla?
Thanks, Chuck. I think we have a good list here for suggested selection criterion. I don't think we're going to be adding much value if we continue on and try and hone in on some of these. I think it's a good list. I feel like we should kind of move along here if everybody's in agreement.
Okay. John?
Let's ask the expert here. Dorothy, do you see anything not in this list of criteria that we're missing?
Honestly, if I saw something that was a huge gap, I would have put it in the selection criteria when I gave you the suggested list. So I might not be the best person to ask. You know Reading far better than I do. So, you know, I was taking it from what I saw, the themes coming through in the survey. And I think that, you know, the things that you put in as from your experience from the committee viewpoint is exactly what we hope that committees do when they take this list and look at it and add their own perspective.
Then I'd actually agree with Carla on this and say we've got a good list. Let's go from there.
Anybody else?
I'm good with our list.
Good. Tom, did you have some? Or
I'm biting my lip. I'll end this in this way. I'm fine to end where it is. I think if you were to look at this and say compare it to a superintendent's rubric for evaluation, you'd be missing quite a few critical criteria points. And every one of those has that model concept to them. And you talked about modeling teacher. There's modeling curriculum development that's on that list as well. It's a specific item on the list, right? So there are a lot more that we potentially can do. I'm fine with saying the list is this. What I'm struggling with is how is this going to help differentiate people? Really, I think if I were to look at this and say, if I were to give, candidates 1 to 4 rankings on this, where's the differentiation coming in? And that's where I'm struggling right now. I think that there's a lot here that, frankly, a lot of the applicants should be able to check the box on. But where do we differentiate the excellent candidate from the very good candidate? And I'm struggling with this list to say there's something here that's going to drive out that excellent candidate versus very good candidate.
Aaron?
Carla was before me.
Oh, Carla, sorry.
Thanks. Tom, I think the answer to your question is the better candidate gets shaken out in the interview process.
Right.
This list is not gonna qualify or disqualify anybody. It's the interview. And I would suffice to say, if there was a candidate who he really hit it home in the interview and people liked this person and they were missing some of these criterion, that would not be a disqualifying factor. So I think the list is not going to help us. It's the person, it's the qualifications, and it's how the interview goes as part of it as well.
Aaron?
Yeah, I agree with what Carla was saying, in that I feel like people are going to stand out. They're going to stand out through their resume and specific experiences that they offer that, the screening committee will recognize that we need. They're going to stand out in the interview. But I think that we run the risk of narrowing who will apply if we start getting too busy on this list. I think there are a number of things that we could all say we would really like to see in a candidate. Particular experiences at particular levels or particular types of education or leadership, but I'm not sure that we have to encapsulate that all here. I feel like that can come out with the screening committee.
So I guess I'll just say this. I mean, I think you're right. The interview is going to be important. Where I was trying to go with it is subjective versus objective criteria, as much as possible. Hopefully the selection criteria are interviewing 10, 12 people on the schedule we've set up, and we're going to probably have them bring 3 to 5 to us. So what I want to be careful of is that the touchy-feely interview is the one that they come to us with, right? Even if it's not somebody that would otherwise be as strong of a candidate. So I bring that from experience with so many other interviews and candidates and other places, not necessarily superintendent ones, obviously. No, other than Chuck, and I don't even know, Chuck, if you went through it back in the day with John, right?
So
none of us have gone through the process.
I was on the search committee for John's predecessor.
Yeah, back in the
Income days.
Yep. I think I'm just trying to figure that out. I agree that a lot can come out of an interview, a lot can come out of a resume. I don't want to get to the point where we're like, well, I can't really put my finger on what differentiates candidate A from candidate B. It's going to happen anyway, I suppose. So I'll stop and we'll just go forward with this as it is. But it just feels like there's a little bit too subjective criteria here.
Okay. Dorothy, did you have something?
Not on this topic, no.
Okay. All right, so we don't need to vote on this, correct?
Correct.
So that was the agenda that I had. Did you have something else you wanted to?
Well, the only other thing is, just to be clear, so we have all this information, you looked at the brochure, and from here, we're going to take the information from tonight, your suggestions about the brochure, your corrections, and continue to work on that with the objective of getting the advertising out there next week, which means that from this point, I would share as the brochure develops with Chuck and with Tom. And someone needs to be the sign off that says, yes, the brochure is ready to go. So I need some clarity on who that person is.
Okay, I'll do that. I mean, I'll confer with Tom and Gail, and so.
Okay. And I just want to make sure before we leave that no one else has any additional questions for me at this point.
I'm good.
Oh, thanks, Dorothy. It's great.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Yep.
Thank you.
And again, if you look at the brochure and see any more places that you see anything that needs fixing, please be in touch.
Okay, thank you, Dorothy.
Okay, you're welcome.
Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Sean,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Chuck, I, and thank you, Gail, Linda, and Andy. And thanks again, Dorothy. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy
Thank you all.
Thanksgiving.
Happy
Thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Good night.
Right.